curious to also note is that when you change regions, you change mindset.
To build successful careers, and for that, first you need to define what success means to you, because that's different things for different people.
So how do you see the scale, or do you see the impact and tenure of the career? Do you see
That is a very personal decision. Debate between breadth versus depth of impact.
how do you actually associate yourself with different genres of businesses?
There's a very important point here, and that is the luxury to fail.
How you actually got that moat out for Koro to build that space to work, play, and connect?
There is a play area downstairs. We're not a replacement for childcare. We're not a creche. We're not a daycare. We're not a school. There is an event calendar that is really loaded. That's what the main goal was.
Hi everyone, this is Shruti again from the next episode of Brand New You. And for today's episode, we have Tena, who is a serial entrepreneur. She has about 15 years of work experience, and she's built various businesses across different tenors, from creativity to social impact to now a very cool business called Escoro, which she will explain to us a little further. But today's episode is all about global paths and non-linear career paths. And for the young professionals, it's very intriguing to see how it is best now in this world to have a non-linear journey and still be very successful. So for that, welcome Tena to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So Tena, I think the audience would love to hear more about you, your journey, and your vision in general.
Sure. So my name is Tena. I'm originally from Croatia. I have been living in Bangalore for the past 8 years. I moved here from Dubai. Before that, I was in London, and before that, I was in Croatia. So I was all over the place. But the interesting part is that when I was in high school, the only thing I wanted to be was a psychologist. So first and foremost, I'm a failed psychologist, and then I'm everything else.
Yeah.
So you know how they always say it's those things that you do as a child where like
Yeah.
your passion actually lies later on in life. I think I was always an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
I was making my grandparents pay for coffee in their own kitchen because I turned it into a cafe. And so after I graduated from my undergrad in Croatia, I was looking for a master's program, and I found a program in social entrepreneurship in London. And so I was 23 when I left Croatia, moved to London, did my master's, met my husband. So it was kind of a two-in-one. And that program really opened my eyes to the possibilities of non-traditional careers, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe that the business of business is business. I do
Yeah.
truly believe that every business is a social business if done correctly, right?
Yeah.
And so this opened my eyes to a whole new career path. We did a program in Indonesia, my first time working on ground, my first time in Asia. And it was really this moment of like, oh, there are other ways to live a life. You don't have to just do like a very traditional path. After London, moved to Dubai, co-founded a company with my husband called the Sustainability Platform, which was a social impact consultancy that helped companies integrate CSR into their core business operations. Now, through that work, I started focusing a lot on gender and development. And my particular forte was capacity building for female entrepreneurs in complex emergencies. So I have volunteered and worked on projects in Haiti, in Malawi, in Gaza,
Mm.
in Syrian refugee camps in Jordan, pretty much all over the Middle East. And with that work, I started getting more and more into gender work through a masculinities lens, right? Because when I tell you I work in gender,
Yeah.
people always hear women empowerment.
Yeah.
And it's as if men and boys don't have a gender.
Yeah.
Only women and girls have a gender. So then I started working a lot more on the masculinity side of things, and I founded a social enterprise called Project Cal, and that was kind of coincided with our move to India 8 years ago. Project Cal focused a lot on gender mainstreaming in schools, in corporates, but through a masculinities lens, on figuring out what it actually means to be a man in the 21st century. So still very much through a feminist lens. Then I had my son, and then I became super interested in feminist parenting.
Mm.
I don't care what's the best brand of a stroller or what's
Yeah.
the best brand of a pacifier. He'll figure it out. That doesn't matter. But how do you raise a child during a climate collapse, right? How
Yeah.
do I, as a white woman, raise a brown man in the world that is so racist, for instance? These are the issues that we then, me and my co-founder, started really, really heavily focusing on. Then through that, I think that you always build for yourself as an entrepreneur, right? I went back to work when Leo was 3 months old. That's my son. And I realized that as much as I love Bangalore, Bangalore with small kids sucks. And now my husband's going to be like, stop saying that Bangalore sucks. I
Yeah.
love Bangalore, but it is true. When you have small children, it is hard.
Yeah.
There is a baked in assumption that a
Mhm.
parent is going to take 3 years out of their lives to raise a child.
Yeah.
We want to guess which parent that is? We all know who it is, right? And so that's how Coro came to be. I really started thinking about what is an architectural and an infrastructural solution to create a place where parents can show up fully and authentically in all facets of their lives without sacrificing their careers, without sacrificing their ambition, but still being present for their children. Luckily, my friend Bhavna Kumar, who is an architect, was thinking about the same problem at the same time from an architectural perspective, and that's how Cora was born. In the same time, me and my best friend in Croatia were thinking, what can we do together? Because she lived in Milan and then she lived in the Netherlands. And so we came up with starting a retreat for Croatian creators, creatives, and entrepreneurs who want to build authentic but global careers. And so we launched Good Camp, which is a retreat that we do as well. I think that covers everything.
Yeah, I think amazing. I think it's a definition of non-linear. I
Yeah.
see non-linear in two sense. One is in the geographies of the regions that you covered from UAE to Asia now to bits of Europe, and also non-linear businesses that you have done, which is completely different. But what I'm curious to also note is that when you change regions, you change mindsets, and of course, you talked a bit about the culture of the region as well, and then second of all is also when you do different businesses. For example, you just talked about Reddit, you talk about Project Cull in the gender space. So you need a completely different mindset, you need a completely different lens. So how do you adapt, and do you think that you need the right ecosystem to make you adapt, or it's your passion, your goal?
So I think that if you look at my career path in the past 17 years, and now I'm aging myself, but it's true, it has been 17 years. Um, how it comes out changes, but the core values don't. To build successful careers, and for that, first you need to define what success means to you, because that's different things for different people. But to be successful for your own definition, you need to be very much aligned with your own values and understand what those values are, right? So even when young entrepreneurs tell me money, for instance, money is never usually an end goal. It's what it gets you. Is it freedom? Is it flexibility? So once you know your core values, even when you look at the past 17 years, you kind of see that it's just showing up in different ways. But the core values of creating more equitable spaces, more equitable ecosystems, those are always
Yeah.
kind of present, right? Now, culturally, yes. I mean, obviously, as a Croatian, though my whole country has less people than Whitefield,
Yeah.
literally. These are big changes,
Yeah.
right? But the more exposed you are to different cultures, the more you realized how deeply similar we all are.
Hmm.
We all actually want the same things. We want safety, we want security, we want our families to be happy. Now, again, that shows up in different ways, but the underlying currents are always the same. What I will say helps me a lot is that whenever I move or I want to start something new, I always jump into the deep end. No, when I moved here, the first order of business was creating that ecosystem, figuring out what exists out there, meeting people, just being out there, right? And even when it feels very uncomfortable to put yourself out there, especially in a city that's so different from where you came from, so much more complex culturally, religiously, in every sense, right? Because it is not a very homogeneous country and it's not a homogeneous city. So, really, really challenging to put yourself out there, but you have to. Nobody is
Yeah.
going to give you any opportunities if you're hiding in your room. And this is what I tell a lot of young entrepreneurs who come to me with these ideas like, I have a great idea, it's going to change the world. What is it? Well, I don't want to tell you. You have to put yourself out there. That is really the only way to start creating those synergies, because I fundamentally reject the idea of anybody being self-made. Nobody is self-made. We are all
Hmm.
community made, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody has to open the doors. Somebody has to speak your name in rooms that you're not present in. And that doesn't happen if you don't jump into the deep end.
No, I think I'd really like the concept of you are community made and you're not, it's not about being self made and, being put out there. And when I see individuals, I see three facets in them. One is a functional aspect, what they believe in, what they want to do, or what they envision to do. Second is an emotional aspect of it. They want to create a value out of it. There is some end goal that they want to create. There are some facets that are powering them emotionally. And the third is, of course, the value education that they build in, and where they want to be, what they want to build, what is their vision, and what is the end goal that a person wants. And in this, a curious question that I had is, different businesses that you might have seen have different motives and different goals. So how do you see the scale, or do you see the impact, and in which tenure of the career do you see that happening?
That is a very personal decision. I think that
Mm,
everybody needs to make for themselves, and it's a debate between breadth versus depth of impact,
mm,
right? In a country the size of India, what does scale mean? It can be 10,000 koros, and we still won't even
yeah,
scratch the surface, right? So, but what is the transformational impact that each of those koros have on the families around them? For me, it is always going to be about breadth, depth versus breadth, always, because I want to see that transformation that is happening in the ecosystem because we exist. That means that the business growth is going to be slower. And those are those questions that you have to answer for yourself. And it ties us back to what is your measure of success. As an entrepreneur, let's say I get VC money, we open 1,000 more koros because that's what scale looks like. Is this a life I want for myself? Probably not. But 30 more, yeah, sure, I could do, right? So I think that we have all kind of bought in the Silicon Valley Kool-Aid of there only being one way of existing as an entrepreneur. There's only one way of growing, and that's that hockey stick growth,
yeah.
and it's super rapid. That's not necessarily what creates the most impact. It is not necessarily what I want for myself as a person, because being an entrepreneur is just one part of who I am as a person. And if that's what you want, more power to you. But I think that that is a conversation that every entrepreneur really has to have with themselves, and not to fall into this trap that there is a one size fits all, especially when it comes to scale, the speed of scale as well, right? Are you scaling before you're ready? What does ready actually look like? Is it just an external possibility, or is it also an internal? Um, our ops cannot handle scale at this size, right? Or at this speed. So, how do you build those systems internally that will support scale and growth? But what does that actually mean? What is the depth of impact? If I have 1,000 families coming into Coro, what does that mean versus if I have 50 families who I can then track how having this ecosystem actually impacts their lives? What are the actual outcomes and not just outputs that come from it? Those are really important questions.
Got that. I think before we come to Koro, which I'm deeply curious about, and I'm sure the audience is, one last question before we go into that segment is, we have always seen serial entrepreneurs who are opening different businesses or are investing in different businesses which is of the same kind. But here I see a little bit of a difference in terms of the breadth, as you said, also the scale of the business, and also the fields of the business. So how do you actually associate yourself with different genres of business, if I were to say?
I was very young when I started. I always said that I've never had a real job. So I was 22 when we started the sustainability platform. You grow, you change, you learn more. Hopefully, you are smart enough that you know that you need to learn more. You open yourself up to more possibilities. You expose yourself more. I was lucky enough. Or stubborn enough to have worked in all of these different environments, and you cannot not be affected by that. And so, the more you know, the better you hopefully get. I also think that when we talk about serial entrepreneurship, there is a very important point here, and that is the luxury to fail. Most women do not get to become serial entrepreneurs. You fail once and it's like, okay, you've
Yeah.
tried, good for you, now go and get a job, right? This is usually luxury of men
Yeah.
to be serial
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So to have the privilege to fail and to have the luxury of failure is super, super important. And that comes back to what you were talking about, the emotional aspect as well, growing thicker skin, your tolerance for pain increasing as you go along, and then you get smarter, you change what you're doing, you tweak. I'm always passionately in love with the problem, not with the solution. And so the problem for me has always been the same, really. It is about creating more equitable environments. The solution changes depending on what the market tells you, depending on what you know, how much you know, the opportunities that you see around yourself, and so on. So it's the same drive, but it just shows up differently in different stages of life.
I think that's also if I'm not an entrepreneur now, but listening to you is really
Mm.
inspirational to see how you can look at yourself and be better at your job on a daily basis.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
never be complacent. And it
yeah,
doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or a salaried employee
yeah,
or whatever it is, a freelancer.
yeah,
Complacency is a killer. It's the first and foremost killer.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the yeah. Never be complacent.
Yeah, and I really like that we don't see the solution, but we see, be very passionate about the problem itself and understand what the problem is. And since I'm coming from healthcare, I think that's a good takeaway for me, and I will definitely take that back. But now coming to the most important part, which is also your passion and your vision that you brought to life, which is Koro. And I was reading about Koro, very intrigued about how you saw the white space in the market, because I'm sure there are a lot of crashes that exist in the office. But how you actually got that moat out for Koro to build that space to work, play, and connect, wherein you bring equitable environments, wherein you bring the parents as well as the children in one space, so that they have a productive day ahead.
Yeah, so you're right. There's a ton of crashes. There's also a ton of co working spaces. And we fail the second we start comparing ourselves to either of those two spaces, right? What I wanted to create, put it very bluntly and very simply, is a Soho house for families. I wanted to create an aspirational, welcoming, there's slight edge to the environment. Physical space was never the goal, right? The goal was the ecosystem. And so this is what I set out to create, me and Bhavna, architecturally and programming wise and in every other sense of the word. That's what the main goal was. It was never to have a we work for mummies, right? That's not. And it's again this interesting assumption that Koro is for working moms, right? But it's for families. And it also allows fathers a space to be more involved in their children's lives, caregivers of all kinds, grandparents as well, and really create a space that there is a play area downstairs. We're not a replacement for childcare. We're not a crash. We're not a daycare. We're not a school. There is a co-working aspect upstairs, but it looks completely different from what you would expect. There is an event calendar that is really loaded. Like
Yeah,
there's always something happening.
yeah, I saw
Koro.
that. Yeah,
Always, yeah. It's
yeah, yeah,
it's a big challenge, but it also I think what makes us really sticky with our community. And all of those physical elements simply serve to create a community and an ecosystem. Early parenthood is lonely, it's isolating, it leads to burnout. Women, in particular, after they have children, completely start reimagining what success looks like. What do outcomes look like? What does productivity actually look like? What's worth your time being away from your child, right? So even women who go back into the workforce tend to drop out of the workforce in the first year after going back because they're like, this is simply not aligned with who I am anymore. But that creates a massive gap in confidence, in skills, in employability later on down the line, and it doesn't serve anybody. And so to have that space where you do not have to put your ambition on hold, you're not penalized for ambition, you're celebrated for it, while at the same time, caregiving is not simply your responsibility, right? There is a system. We don't need better parents, we need better scaffolding. Indian urban families, in particular, how families live has changed drastically in a generation, and especially in cities like Bangalore, right, where everybody lives in nuclear families, everybody has come from somewhere else. But that gap, we're telling women you can be everything you want, but we're not giving you the infrastructure to actually be everything
yeah,
you want,
yeah.
right? At the same time, fathers now spend more time than ever with their children. But if you look at programming, it's mommy and me music class at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah,
So obviously, again, by design, it says caregiving is for a certain type of person. So these are all of these kind of elements that we are trying to bring together under one roof. The main rule of Koro is nothing goes into Koro that wouldn't go into my own house. What I wouldn't give to my child, I wouldn't put into Koro as well. So we remove a lot of this emotional and intellectual labor around parenting. You never have to think about, do I have a diaper? We have a diaper. Do I have menstrual products? We do. Do I have a high chair or a changing table? We do, right? So it's just easier to kind of get out and go.
Yeah.
and not be stuck at home. And so all of these things, all of these like very vague ambitions,
Yeah.
and all of this by theory around feminist parenting and equitable parenting came under one roof in Domlor in Bangalore, our
Mm.
first location, 6,500 square feet, with the hope that this is the year that we reach whatever scale looks like
Yeah.
for us this year.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good space to be in, and to actually find out that white space is really important. And I think you have found out that problem and tried to build a community where equitable communities can thrive. And while I was going through Coro as well, I saw something called as a play passport, and I think
Mm-hmm.
you have introduced a lot of cool things in there,
Yeah.
so it the community thrives.
Yeah. My favorite thing to work on was the merch for
Yeah.
Cora with my friend and designer, Nia Tandapani, who is a fantastic designer. And she has designed all of our merch. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, you have this massive thing that you have to work on, but you hyper focus on
Yeah.
this one thing on the side that was play passports for me. So I'm
Yeah.
very glad that you've mentioned them. It is about corifying the experience,
Mhm.
right? If you look at brands like Soul Cycle or even Chakra here, right? Why are they so successful? Because they make that experience for the community. You all speak the same language. You know exactly what is going to happen. You have an internal language that kind of separates you from the rest. So you're in the know. That Coro does for the children as well, right? You have your play passport. You know what's happening. You have the language of Coro. All of the experience are Corofied. And then it doesn't matter how many more spaces like this open, right?
Yeah.
Because we have our language happening.
Yeah. I think in Bangalore, since you have the language which is set up, I think the culture is now well known to the crowd outside. And now, when you open it to the new spaces, which of course I will ask you a little bit later, I think this will only amplify and bring to life newer communities. But I'm curious to understand on the go-to-market piece. This is, of course, a unique space, and this is in between. I would say it's not in between, but it's a new
Mm,
creche plus a co-working
mm.
space plus a lot of emotional elements put together, and it's a whole new community that you have built, right? But how did the public perceive it when you opened it, and what were the few challenges that were there, especially because of the problems of the nuclear families that come in,
Yeah.
because of the support issues that come in,
Yeah.
and also returnship to work
Work.
that became a concept, unfortunately, only 2 or 3 years ago in
Mm,
India.
mm.
So how did you tackle those GTM problems?
Yeah, I think that the first year, and we've been open for about a year and a half now. Let's say for 6 to 8 months, we're just about educating the market. Only
Mm.
that. Because families need to understand, where do you fit Coro into your life? Well, I can go and work from the third wave, but I can take my child to Funky Monkey. I can leave my child at home with a nanny. So, like, where exactly does this fit? The only way to actually show you where Coro fit is to get you into the door. You spend one day at Coro and you'll be like, yes, I get it. Like, I get what the value prop here is, but you need to get people into the door. When you're building something and you're doing a lot of market research, obviously, you will get a lot of false positives, right?
Yeah.
People want to tell you what they think you want to hear, and nobody wants to
Yeah.
disappoint you.
Yeah.
So I was like, we're going to open, we're going to sell out, we're going to be full in the first week. That did not happen, right? So for 6 to 8 months, we're an uphill, educate the market struggle. What I'm really proud of is we have never spent a rupee on like advertising or ads or on social media. It was all organic, which really means that parents trust parents. And when you have that reputation and people keep coming back, that's what I'm most proud of. Second is figuring out that you can't be everything for everyone.
Yeah.
We will not fit into everyone's lives, and that is absolutely okay. If you have two grandparents and a nanny at home and you're already paying for school, yeah, probably there is zero reason for you to drop 20K at Cora,
Mm.
right? And you as an entrepreneur have to be okay with drawing those lines. I cannot be everything for everyone. Who we do serve, we serve very well, right? And
Mm.
we need to focus on that. But figuring out who that is, what is exactly that usage case, that takes time. So that was the second big challenge. And I think that running a physical space in
Mm.
its own is always going to be a challenge because things die and break all
Yeah.
the time. So there's always something happening. And Bangalore now is fully dug up. So there's always these
Yeah.
challenges that are out of your hands a little bit. So you just kind of have to roll with the punches. But I would say that, yes, the biggest challenge in the first part of our strategy in our GTM was really about explaining to families what the value prop is because it's such a new concept. However, when you're ahead of the curve, you have to stay ahead of the curve. Because, like I said, the second we start comparing ourselves to WeWork, we lose. Of course, we do, right? When I start comparing myself to a funky monkey, I lose because I can never be that. So you can't fall into that comparison. But at the same time, if the market keeps telling you one thing, how stubborn, how long are you going to be? So it's that fine balance of figuring out, like, okay, now is the time to pivot. Now is the time to tweak, but not lose the soul of what it is that we're trying to do, and hoping that there's going to be enough people that resonate with.
Yeah. I think when you look at the GTM, there's of course the experience that you create, and second is the product. And for your product is Koro and the offline space that you create. So my next intriguing question is about this offline space. Does it is there a difference if you create the offline space a little differently? Would that affect the mindset of the people who are coming in? Do you think that the aesthetics of a place really matter when you're building a community like this?
It's a very, very difficult question for me to answer because it's a question that I ask myself all the time as well. First, Koro had to look sensational and it had to be beautiful, because it's the first one, right?
Yeah.
And so you also don't know what works until you do it, right?
Yeah.
To a large extent. So I call this a Koro medium. For me, a Koro large would be all of this plus a gym. And a Koro small would be just a play cafe with a couple of meeting rooms. So how Koro shows up in different markets would change. Even in Bangalore, if you go to Indranagar, it's a very different way that people live than if we go to JP Nagar, for instance, or Whitefield with all of these tech parks, and or North with international schools. So how do you slice and dice the space and how it shows up in different aspects? That is something that I still don't know financially what the sweet spot for Koro is. Is it 6,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, or 3,000 square feet? That is still to be seen. But then you look at the market in general, other private members club. Quorum is doing 60,000 square feet, 100,000 square feet, massive spaces. So there's scope for this for sure. Um, does the space need to be aesthetically pleasing? Bangalore is now a beautiful city. Every space is a beautiful space.
Yeah.
You need to be up there,
Yeah, even
right?
cafes nowadays.
Cafes are stunning,
Yeah.
community spaces are stunning. It's not enough to have four walls and be like, here, people will come because I offer something good. Everything's beautiful now. So you have to be Instagrammable. That is simply the nature. Our design language is quite different. It's a lot more calm. It's a lot more negative space. No primary colors. Very opposite of what you would expect a children's space to look like. But we really wanted to Koro to wherever you put it in the world, it feels like it belongs. So that was always the main goal. So it resonates a lot with a lot of repats, people coming back to India, with people who had a lot of global exposure. But I hear comments also very often like, why is everything beige? Shouldn't children have more color? So
Color,
that
yeah.
again goes into like, you have to make decisions that you're
Yeah.
comfortable with and be okay with the fact that it's not going to be for everybody. I personally, when I come to core, I'm still like, wow, I can't believe I
Yeah.
get to work from here. Like, it's so cool and beautiful.
Yeah.
But obviously, you can't cater to everyone's
Yeah.
tastes.
No, I can think of this even personally. So I was in Denmark and Germany for a bit, and at the same time, I'd bought a house in Bangalore, and my entire taste of the house changed because I lived there. So in my house, everything is beige,
Yep.
beige or cappuccino, or it's white.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of these three colors. So
Yeah.
I can completely relate to what you said.
Yeah.
You also said about organic that people spoke about Koro a lot, and that was a main
Mm.
driver of people coming to Koro. Do you also believe that social media marketing would play a role in the next coming months to scale, or do you still believe peer to peer would still drive a huge value?
What got you so far can only get you so far, right? Things will get you to a certain point. They're not going to get you over that point. Now, the biggest problem with businesses is you have to spend money to make money. Of course, when you're in early days, there's no money to spend. So that's always a question of, you need to find the budget, but where is the budget? And there's always 10 other things that carry priority. So I'm very well aware that we have reached as far as we can with what has brought us this far. But for every new stage, new strategies are needed. Social media marketing plays a massive role. If you look at the best brands in Bangalore, they're fantastic storytellers. and storytelling is all that you need, right?
Yeah.
Why are there queues in front of coffee shops and restaurants for like any new drop, right? Because those brands are fantastic storytellers. And so to create this push and pull of being accessible, but still a little bit of FOMO and a little bit of scarcity, that needs a lot of good storytelling. But ultimately, what always is going to be different in this kind of family space is that parents trust parents, and that is always going to be the biggest drive. One bad review or one bad experience is enough for other 10 parents to say, you know what, maybe we will not come this time. No, so that's something that we always are very, very mindful of. Again, of course, not every day can be perfect, but if we deliver on that experience consistently, then that's more important than anything else.
Yeah. I really see this as a like we say longevity clinics. This is like a longevity space for community. So that's where I see Koro as at least. And one of the major trends that I'm seeing nowadays with different entrepreneurs and also different businesses that are coming up, Bangalore is full of them, is founder led personal branding. So do you think founder led personal branding is really important? And where I'm coming from is also there are a lot of young professionals who are listening to Brand New You, and they're also coming from a space that is personal branding really that important? Does that put you at an edge?
Yes, it does. For me, and I'm just thinking about it, this has been really important. I think it has really brought us a lot of exposure. Um, Not every brand needs this, right? So it's a question of how does it fit who you are as a person? How does it fit the brand itself? There are fantastic brands that speak for themselves. Nobody even knows who the founder is, and they're brands that are much younger, much hipper, much faster, and they're very centered around the founder. I also am not sure if this is enough to kind of bring you to the next level. You can't over rely on the founder. It really has to be the team and the product and the experience itself. But building a personal brand cannot hurt you. However, a personal brand has to be built on authenticity and vulnerability because that's what makes you relatable. So I cannot stand when I see all of this. I get up at 3 a.m. and I take a nice bath and I do this and I do this. Where is the where is me being relatable, right? It's these shortcuts to success that are nonsense, right? They're absolute nonsense. They don't work. Nothing works in this world like that. So if you are comfortable with being authentic, with being vulnerable, with being open to critique, because the second you open yourself up, you're opening yourself up to all kinds of opinions, right? So again, where do you draw the line? How much of yourself are you putting out there? How much are you keeping private? I'm not very good at that. I just put everything
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
but it works for me, right? But
Yeah.
again, it works for me because I have thicker skin. There's not a high social cost for me to do that. My
Yeah.
husband is not going to leave me. My in-laws are not going to kick me out. What's the social cost associated with
Mm.
these things, right? There are many elements to this. It's not as easy as like, hi guys, I'm Tena, welcome to Coro. It's not as
Yeah.
easy as that,
Yeah.
right? So again, how do you bridge that gap between being strategic while being authentic?
Yeah.
And also it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think when I
Yeah.
started also putting out on LinkedIn and I started also podcasting, there are a lot of people who came and said a lot of negative things as well, along with the positive. And you need to be really thick skinned to actually keep going and, be out there. And because there are more positives than negatives if you were to be authentic and relatable to the audience.
Absolutely. And but it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
To do this properly, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So there are some days when I don't care. It's okay. Nobody needs to see me
See me. Yeah. Yeah.
anymore. We'll
Yeah.
just do the other stuff.
But Tana, coming to the last bit, I would love to know, and this is a very uh, common question that people ask me as well. But how do you manage your time? You have
Mhm.
family, you have work, you have different other businesses. I'm sure your mind must be running at different tangents to think of 10 new problems that you want to solve. So, how do you keep yourself not complacent and be passionate about everything that you want to crack?
I think that is because I am very passionate, so the drive is a lot easier to find. But I have a 5-year-old. I have Koro. I have good camp in Croatia, and there's still a lot of other interests that I have. I love to read. I love to cook. I love to host my friends over. All of these things. You have to also be a good spouse, a good friend, a good daughter. There's a lot. There is really a lot, but Everything in life comes in phases, and this is simply a phase. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, for women, our peak caring years are also our peak careers years. So if you do want children, this is going to be an overlap. Nobody can avoid it. I'm not going to lie to you, it's a disaster. Most days you feel like you're failing on either one or the other front, but it's a phase. And so waves come and go. Secondly, everything, and I mean everything, including like what time I need to feed my cats, goes into the calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it's not happening. And I also color code my calendar. That gives me a better like visual representation of this week. I actually need to focus more on this because I let those things slide
Yeah.
last week. And this is the hardest part because a lot of us are perfectionists, not me, but a lot of people are. The hardest part is being okay with things getting done, not perfect. In the startup world, in the entrepreneurship world, done will always eat perfect for lunch and dinner. Things just need to happen. Then you can tweak them and make them beautiful and make them perfect. They need to happen first. And so if you get into that paralysis of, I don't have enough time to make this perfect, you're never going to do anything, right? Things simply need to go out there, then quickly fix them, then we'll make them prettier. It doesn't matter. So you have to let go of that perfectionism. You have to let go of this idea that everything has to be perfect and I have to show up perfectly in all facets of my life. That simply is not how it works. It's impossible, and you're gonna drive yourself crazy. I read this on internet somewhere. You have a lot of balls in the air, right? But some of them are made of rubber and some of them are made of glass. So you will not drop the glass balls, and you need to know what those glass balls are for you. That's my child. For me, that's my personal health because no, if I am sick, then nothing else will happen. But also rubber balls. If I don't respond to my best friend, it's okay. Like she will understand. I will message her tomorrow. So it helps you kind of sequence things in the order of importance for yourself.
Yeah, when I started my career, I had the same notion that I have to be perfect, and I was really hardworking. And I was like, okay, this is something that I need to ship it to my boss, and it has to be the best. And now I've come to that stage where I have multiple other projects, and I simply can't. So I have dance, I have this to do, I have at work. It's really crazy. But I think sometimes even some days I'm even double hatting, triple hatting. But I think I have come to a stage also where I truly believe what you said, that it's completely okay to ship things out there, tweak it, and then enhance it, and then figure it out.
I will also say because I'm Croatian and Mediterranean, and India has a really tough work culture, really tough work culture. If you call me at 6 p.m., that's not happening. That is not happening. We run a family club. We're not operating. We're not doing like open heart surgeries. Nobody's going to die. It's okay. It's not that important. Somebody posted also on Instagram. There's no once you realize there's no crisis in marketing,
Yeah.
you move on
Yeah.
through life a lot easier. What's the worst that can happen? I'll call you tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's okay.
Mm.
It's fine. Nobody's dying. No one's there on the operating table. The heart is not beating out there.
Mm.
It's okay. It's okay. And I know that I can say this now with like 17 years of experience and being a little bit more senior in my career. Of course, when I was 22, I was also dying at work all the time. So I know that this comes with hindsight and it comes with experience. But really, when you put it like that and you look at it and you look at what is actually, it's okay. The
Yeah.
email can wait.
Yeah. With that, I think it was nice, really nice having you, Tena, on this
Thank you so
podcast.
much for
And
having me.
yes, and I think the young professionals would have learned a lot. I personally also learned a lot.
Thank you.
More than Koro, I think the value system that you bring in, and certain
Mm,
tenacities that you brought in, and also how you look at work, I think I will also take back tomorrow.
Thank you.
Uh, and not tomorrow, but yeah, Monday.
Yeah,
Yes,
correct.
correct.
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow,
nothing. Tomorrow,
nothing. Just
Sunday,
God's
nothing.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So
Yeah.
thanks, and thanks to the audience to listen to Brand New You, and we'll come with the next podcast very soon.